What's up, Mod Squad? This is Innova's newest disc, the Innova Fox. It's a modern mid-range that flies like a fairway driver but has the control of a mid-range. I was lucky enough that Innova sent me two, so at the end of this video, stay tuned and I'll be giving away one of these. Before we get into the full review, make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 1,300 subscribers, and when we get to 2,000, you know I'm going to be doing another big giveaway. Okay, let's get right into that review. So let's take it out into the field and see how it flies. We're going to be comparing it against some of my favorite molds, including the Mako 3, the Innova J, the Innova Stingray, and of course, the Innova Wombat 3. I'm going to be throwing this on a whole bunch of different angles so you get an idea of just how it flies in certain conditions. There's just an ever so slight headwind that we're going to be throwing into. And stay tuned right till the end, and I'll tell you how you can win one of these awesome Innova Foxes. First up, let's just see how it flies on a nice flat release. See, that -2 really wants to kick in, especially when you throw it with a little bit of snap. Let's compare that next to a flat release with a Wombat 3 because I think they're going to fly the most similarly. Very similar in the fact that those discs both really want to turn. Now let's compare that to the Innova Mako 3. Thrown flat as well. And then last but not least, we're going to compare that to the J, which should be a little bit more stable. Much straighter, with just a tiny bit of fade at the end. Now we also have the Stingray, which is a -3.1 mid-range, and I think it'll be a lot flippier than this new Fox. So let's see what it looks like on a flat release. Significantly flippier. On hyzer, the Innova Fox should flip up and go straight, but it kind of just depends on the wind conditions, the speed that you put on it, and that hyzer angle. Let's see if we can get it to pop up, go straight, and push right to the end zone there. There we go, flips up, turning just a bit, but honestly fading back relatively straight, right through the goalpost, about 300 feet. Now let's try that same hyzer angle with the Mako 3. Didn't quite get the same snap, but flipped up, went straight, just a little left. We'll do the same with the J, which should honestly just stay on a hyzer. Yeah, it pretty much just wants to stay on a hyzer the whole way. Still lots of glide though. Similarly, the Wombat 3 should flip up and go straight, but it's a bit more sensitive because it has a 0 fade instead of a 1. There we go, flipped up, went straight. And last but not least, we've got the flippy Stingray again. This thing will probably still turn. It's a really flippy boy. Tons of hyzer. Flipped up, drifted right, then just landed flat. So while I go and grab those discs, let's just talk about my initial hand feel of the new Innova Fox. They say it's a modern mid-range, and honestly, it's exactly what it kind of feels like. And that sounds kind of bizarre because what the heck does that even mean? Well, it just fits the hand super comfortably. I find that a lot of the mid-ranges seem bulky in your hand, and even though this still has a blunt nose, well, and that brings me to the side-by-side profiles. Let's take a look. So like I said, I'm going to be comparing this new mid-range to a bunch of my favorites, including the Innova J, the Mako 3, the Wombat 3, and the Stingray. Let's dive in and do a closer look and look at the comparisons of the side-by-side profiles of all these discs. I'll bring up the rim profiles on the screen here, but I'm going to be comparing them in real time so I can get a look at them. Now, compared to the J, the noses of these discs and the top plate are very similar. What I'm seeing from the Innova Fox is that it's a bit more round and it has a bit more dome, whereas the shoulder of the J is a bit more abrupt and definitely flatter on top. On the underside, there's a bit of a bigger bead on the J, but only by a tiny bit. It has one of those micro beads, and the angle is a little bit steeper, whereas the Fox seems to be a little bit more convex. Now let's compare that to the Mako 3. The J's nose and shoulder is much rounder, but the tops are very similar with that similar shaped dome. On the underside, you're going to see it's a slimmer profile, and the Mako 3 has a rounded bottom, and no microbead. Compared to the Stingray, the shoulder's a bit higher, just as round, same kind of dome, and the underside is very similar as well too, with the microbead being on the Fox and not on the Stingray. I'm also going to say that the profile is still slimmer on the Innova Fox. Now let's compare it to the Wombat 3. First thing you're going to notice is that the Wombat 3 has a much sharper nose, a rounded shoulder, and more of a flatter top, being that kind of 3 disc that it is. It also has a big bead on the bottom compared to the small bead of the Fox. The Innova Fox has a very slim profile, making it very comfortable in the hand. It's the first thing that I noticed, and then the next thing that I noticed is just how easy it is to get this disc to glide. Without any effort at all, this disc just wants to fly. I keep comparing it similarly to my Leopard 3 because that's a disc that I can get to flip up to flat when thrown on a hyzer, or thrown flat, it'll just drift to the right and push for some pretty serious distance. Getting this Fox out to 300 feet was no problem at all. Let's go back into the field and try a couple more throws. So even though it has that blunt nose, it has a pretty shallow rim feel, feels fast coming out of the hand, and it's honestly the most effortless glide that I've ever felt out of a disc. It's flippy, but it's still controllable. It's not like a Rolo or even how I find the Wombat 3s tend to be, or even sometimes those seasoned Makos. It's something that'll come back right at the end of its flight thanks to that one fade. Let's throw it on an anhyzer and then see how it rolls. Let's throw this thing on an anhyzer now and I'll show you how beautiful these turnover shots are with it. Takes a little bit of touch because it is an understable disc, and I do have that kind of 50 to 60 mile per hour. For the beginners to the intermediates that might have that 40 mile an hour arm speed, this thing should be dead straight and very controllable. For anybody above that 50 to 60 range, I mean, you're a bomber, this thing is probably going to be a roller for you, or it might touch get out of jail free kind of disc. All right, on an anhyzer angle, should hold a beautiful turnover. Look at that glide. Wow. Okay, now let's compare that to the Mako 3 first on an anhyzer. Very similar, maybe a touch flippier. Then we'll go to the Wombat 3. Wombat 3 should definitely be flippier than that Mako. Very much so. Kind of wants to dive to hit that ground, maybe even a bit of a roller play. The J is a little bit more stable. The anhyzer might flex out of it just a bit if I throw it on the same angle. Low and I slip, but you get the idea. It does still hold that angle. And last but not least, the Stingray, which honestly on an anhyzer, I'm expecting this to roll and I'll probably lose it. Keep an eye on it for me. Yeah, it's gonna roll just a bit. Not quite enough to stand up, but that shows you just how flippy that Stingray is. Now I've seen some folks put these on roller angles and it looks like an incredible disc for that slot, so let's give it a shot. Oh, nice. Stands up beautifully. Now come back. Boom, gone way past 300, no problem, and it still hadn't stood up. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty darn good roller disc. Now time to go find it. So there you go. You got to see the Innova Fox thrown on a bunch of different angles and compared to some of my favorite mid-range molds. Let's go back to the studio where I'm going to tell you how you can win one of these discs and also my final thoughts. Okay, so I've had my hands on this disc now for a while and I'm just going to say that I am very, very impressed. It glides forever, it's super controllable, and it's one of the most comfortable discs that I've held in a long time. I struggled with this mid-range slot for a while now and I think I'm finally sold. I'm going to have my J for those straight to just slightly stable shots. I've got my Cayman for the overstable slot, and if I need super understable and ridiculous utility, well then I've got my Stingray. So where does this fit in? The Innova Fox I think is going to take over my Mako slot. And I know that sounds crazy, but what I've been finding with the Mako 3 is that you have to be super touchy with it. If you throw it flat, it's going to drift over. If you throw it on a hyzer, sometimes it holds that hyzer line, and what I need is that hyzer flip. That's where the Innova Fox comes in because that's exactly what it does. This disc hyzer flips and then just goes straight with maybe just a tiny bit of fade at the end, depending on the angle and the wind conditions. So there you have it. A brand new disc that's automatically taking out a disc out of my bag that's been in there since I've started playing. Okay, now it's time for the giveaway. All you gotta do to win one of these pre-Proto Star Innova Foxes is comment your favorite mid-range down below. Once I'm back from my vacation out west, I'll pick one random winner in the comment section. Make sure you share with your friends so they get an opportunity to win this as well. I can't wait to hear all your responses, and as always, get out and throw.